Steve Evans with Brock Yates and Ed Bruce. We're back again in Gainesville, Florida for the annual Gatornationals drag races. Frank Manzo just set low ET among the alcohol funny car drivers, and Brock is with him now.
You're back in the fifth, folks. Race time for the professional category.
Hey, Ace, good job. Low ET.
Thank you.
649, 213.
Thank you very much. A little nervous. First round jitters. Very, very nervous.
For what reason?
Well, it's the first race of the year, and we've been here 5 years in a row. Never got down the track first round. Always qualified good. Never be able to get down the track first round.
Making up for a lot of lost time then.
Oh, that's why I was so nervous.
Good job.
Thank you.
So Manzo's victory completes the first round. Let's take a look at second round pairings among the alcohol funny cars. That man Manzo versus Bell. It'll be Gary Henderson up against Joe Camella. Bobby Gottschalk will race Don Gerardo. And it'll be Walsh versus Winters. We've seen the dragsters, we've seen the funny cars. Now we're going to shift gears in our competition. Ed Bruce explains.
One of the more popular classes is the super gas category. The reason for the popularity is the wide variety of cars that run. I'm standing next to a 27T Roadster. And when this car races, it might line up against another Model T Roadster, or a chopped and channeled street cruiser from the 50s, or a pickup truck, or even a brand new Corvette. This is a wide open class, and since there are no rules on cars retaining their stock appearance, there's no telling what'll come to the line. To make the competition in this class fair, the NHRA has set certain restrictions, such as no superchargers and no nitrous fuels. These cars must run on gas or methanol. But the really interesting rule in super gas is the 990 limit on elapsed time. Any car which has an ET lower than 99 loses the race. If both cars break out or run less than 99, the slower car wins. At first, you might think this is a strange way to run a drag race, but it really helps the drivers control costs and promotes close racing. You see, once a driver gets his car in shape to run a 99, he no longer has to worry about spending time and money improving the engine's performance. The driver can now concentrate on driving skills and getting creative with the car's looks. And that's the real beauty of super gas. And if you're still concerned that 99 isn't fast enough, when these cars get to the end of that quarter-mile track, they're doing around 140 miles per hour, and that's moving.
Well, Ed, they may not be the fastest cars in drag racing, but with their short wheelbases, they can be very difficult to drive, and trouble can happen at any moment, as we saw in super gas qualifying when Mickey Thompson took this machine for 5 barrel rolls, Brock Yates.
Plenty dangerous, but also plenty safe because of good, solid NHRA safety construction rules, Steve.
We're going to pick up super gas competition in the 4th round. We actually started with some 64 qualifiers, and that's been pared way down at this point.
And here comes John Hobel out of Cincinnati, Ohio, Steve, in the red 78 Mustang. He's running a 316-inch Chevy engine in that car.
And his opponent is going to be Mike Mazza. Mike from Mount Vernon, Ohio. Mike is a restaurant owner wheeling a 77 Vega.
John Hobel is an electrician by trade and pretty typical of the amateur sportsmen that run in the super gas category.
Hobel's 78 Mustang, too. Well, it'll look like a Ford to the fans, but it's got a Chevrolet motor under the hood.
Again, the only qualifying component of these cars is that they have stock-appearing bodies of any vintage and that they run in that 990 breakout category.
And they also perform the burnout ritual, Brock, but they're not allowed to go over the starting line. So they just sit back in the water. They have independent front brakes that they can push a button and electronically hold the brakes while they spin the huge rear slicks to get them good and hot and clean, as Mike Mazza is first to stage. So Mazza in the far lane, the near lane. John Hobel. We're in super gas competition, the first we've seen of it today.
Mazza carries the front wheels away from the lights. Good close race, though, Steve Evans.
That's right, and they're racing the clock as well. Remember that 990. Oh, Mike Mazza gets there first at a 989, 130 miles an hour. Now, that's under the 990, but Hobel ran even further under the 990, so Mazza advances.
And the next race, Paul Reinford in a 65 Corvette versus Linwood Craft in a 75 Colt.
Linwood is a 43-year-old mechanic from Hollins, Vermont, and he has one of the toughest cars in the class to drive because it has a very short wheelbase and a very big engine. Paul Reinford, his competition, 41-year-old garage proprietor. They call him Moose. That's a pretty 65 Corvette he's driving with a 350 Chevrolet motor.
They're really interesting cars as a class, Steve. Exactly how much would a man have to spend to get one of these ready to race?
How much have you got? Anywhere from $2,000, $3,000 up to $25,000, depending on the caliber of machine you want to compete with.
So the secret is to get down there in no less than 990. Got to feather foot it, Steve.
That's part of the game, and Linwood Craft does it nicely. He is closer to 990 with his 989. And our next pair will feature Johnny LeBeau from Rome, Georgia, up against Doug Kirk. Doug Kirk is only 19 years of age, out of Kermit, West Virginia, with a very nice 81 Camaro, the big block Chevrolet, over 450 inches. His opponent is Johnny LeBeau from Rome, Georgia, 36-year-old speed shop owner. He's got another one of those hard-to-drive short wheelbase Dodge Omnis with a 440 motor. This is LeBeau right here.
Just all engine, Steve. That is a bunch of engine for a little tiny car to be carrying. Of course, it's running. The Omni is a front-wheel drive car. Normally, that's a rear-drive setup in that automobile.
Absolutely right. So, you know, reaction time is maybe more important here than it is in the heads-up non-breakout categories. Because if you can cut a better light, you got a little more cushion at the other end to play with that throttle. Getting awfully close to the center line is Doug Kirk, but he gets it back into his own lane, and from behind, nope, it is Kirk. Kirk there first, but he does not win. Johnny LeBeau with a 978 is closer to the 990. So for Doug Kirk in the red Camaro, it's back to Kermit, West Virginia. But at 19, he'll have a lot more fun in this sport.
So we've had breakouts in the first 3 races. Let's see how Deat Buckner and Steve Cohen do in the next race. Deat Buckner is a 30-year-old full-time drag racer from Kennersville, North Carolina. He's got a 355 cubic inch Chevrolet in that 64 Corvette, Steve.
He's racing this guy, Steve Cohen from Clearwater, Florida. He's got kind of a rare car, a 68 AMX. Remember those from the American Motors Corporation, Brock? But this has got an almost 500 cubic inch Chevrolet motor in it.
Yes, sir, and a good, strong, solid race. Boy, we've had really close racing in all these super gas races so far, Steve.
And in the far lane, it is Steve Cohen there first. That's the perfect run. A 990, you can't do it any better than that, Brock. Steve Cohen hits that magic number. He's going to love that time slip when he gets it.
Let's have another look at this race. Almost a classic super gas drag race, Steve.
You bet it is. Wheels up action. The fans love these cars. They can identify with them. There's a lot of fans for the Corvette. I don't know how many they have for the vintage 68 AMX.
More than they did now that he won one. But right down, just a matter of inches. Look at that.
So only 4 cars remain now, and in the semifinals, it'll be Cohen versus LeBeau. The other half of the semis in a matter of a very few minutes. The engines almost have zippers on them. They come apart very quickly. They can pound in new pistons in a matter of just a very few minutes. Don Woosley in the far lane getting set to face off with Troy Buff. Woosley, a former national record holder, has won a half a dozen major races in the National Hot Rod Association competition. And here is Troy. His father drove this car up until this year, and there's talk that even his younger sister may eventually take the wheel of the car. So the alcohol dragster ranks starting to fill up with young drivers, and then that's a healthy sign as the second-generation kids move into this sport, and the fathers take the roles of crew chiefs. And another sister backing up her brother, Troy Buff.
Troy Buff's car is running an engine built by the Arias people in California. It's based on a 427 Chevy block. The Woosley car's got a Keith Black engine, one of the most famous names in all motorsports. Both those blocks are modified, Steve, especially for drag racing. They got the water passages blocked off because they don't need that kind of cooling, and they're especially strengthened internally for taking the kind of stresses that these automobiles put on them. But they're a special breed of engine you'll just find in drag racing, right?
And they're very strong to withstand the high RPMs at the start. It is Don Woosley, the veteran, off first. He used Troy Buff in the starting line a bit. His experience pays off as Woosley, with a terrific 642 at 213 miles an hour. The car in the far lane is victorious over young Troy Buff. Well, it doesn't take them long to get the next pair lit up. It'll be the Evil Spirit car in the near lane. That is Al DiPozo. And his competition will be Bruce Horner. Horner over in the far lane. Bruce bouncing to a stop on those low air pressure rear tires. Brock Yates is at the end of the track with Don Woosley.
Don, good job. 642, 213. You take it?
Yeah.
How'd you run?
Well, it surprised me. We broke a motor the first round. And I put an old junk head on it, but evidently it worked.
You gonna have to stay with that head for the next round, too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all we got, so that's what we got to use.
Okay, well, good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Woosley's starting to show the pressure, the strain of competition, running short of parts, and maybe even patience. And he's got just a few minutes to fix this car to get it back in the staging lanes. If he doesn't show up, he would be disqualified. Now, disqualified because he lost fire is Bruce Horner. The engine died at the end of the burnout. And this is something you will see happen occasionally if the driver stops the car too quickly, which Horner might have done. The fuel tends to want to run away from the high-pressure pump, and no fuel goes to the motor. Consequently, the fire goes out. So for Al DiPozo, it's a gift here in the second round. DiPozo in the near lane. And this is the second single run DiPozo from Northbrook, Illinois has had today. John Samalik lost fire against Al in the initial round. Now, Al qualified number 2 with a fine 6:43, but all he technically has to do here is get from the starting line to the finish line, just to keep wear and tear equal for all concerned. But I have a feeling that you'll see him make a full pass. They almost always will, just to make sure they still have the combination. So a very dejected Bruce Horner being pushed back towards the pit area where he'll load that car up and get ready for the next race on down the road. Al DiPozo holding that handbrake. The car straining against the brakes on 1,500 horsepower, and absolutely Al DiPozo is going to run at the full 1,320 feet with a 6.51 at 213 miles an hour. So even though he's had 2 gifts, he's still made 2 very strong runs.
There's such a brutal finality about this sport, Steve. Here comes old Bruce Horner all the way down from Bergenfield, New Jersey. Loses fire at the starting line, never even really rolls a wheel. He's gone, he's out, he's finished.
Well, Brock, you remember how excited Mike Kosky was after round 1? Well, here he is again. From Cuddy, Pennsylvania, Kosky in the near lane. His competition will be a tough Texan, Buddy Domingue. But first, it's Kosky coming into the water for the burnout. Look how the tires distort and grow on that burnout. Before we get to this race as they're backing up, Brock Yates is down at the end of the track with Al DiPozo.
6:51, 213. What do you think?
All right.
Did you let it all out? Did you run a little easier?
Run it a lot easier. We burned a piston the last run. We thought it'd be all right. We burned a piston the last run. So we figured we'd just kind of save it since we got a lucky break.
Well, you got a good round. You gonna think she ran good? No problem?
Oh, yeah. She seemed good now. Now we've got a little oil leak here, but I think we'll fix that pretty quick.
All right. Good luck.
Thank you.
Even though he hasn't had to race anybody, he's still burning pistons. Just part of the game these days, the tremendous strain on these high compression motors. Mike Kosky, near lane, the red, white, and blue car. Buddy Domingue here in the far lane from Groves, Texas. Domingue with the Arius motor, a little over 400 cubic inches. Mike Kosky, the Keith Black style, late model Hemi. Domingue brings the RPMs up, as does Mike Kosky. And away first is Buddy Domingue. Mike Kosky with the wheels in the air trying to catch him. And Domingue breaks something in the drivetrain. The rear end, the transmission, something went away. Mike Kosky comes from behind at 6:54, 187 miles an hour.